This week on ANN, Adventists in Germany and Belgium address the devastating floods that have impacted the region.
Adventist leaders sent condolences after the president of the Allegheny East Conference, Henry J. Fordham, and his wife Sharon passed away in a house fire.
And ADRA Canada and the Adventist Church in British Columbia help as Lytton wildfires displaced more than 1,800 residents.
These stories and more coming up.
Thank you so much for joining us this week.
First in the news, the Adventist Church in the Franco-Belgian Union is responding after devastating floods in Germany and Belgium.
More than 160 people are dead, and hundreds more remain missing after catastrophic flooding hit large parts of Western Europe. A desperate search for survivors continues despite great obstacles and difficulties.
At least 133 people died in Germany due to the heavy floods across its western states. In Belgium, 24 were confirmed dead. Authorities warned the number could go up.
Luxembourg, Austria, Switzerland, France, and the Netherlands have also been affected by the extreme rainfall, but have not reported any fatalities. Images showed entire towns underwater, collapsed buildings, and buried cars.
President of the Franco-Belgian Union Conference, Ruben de Abreu, said in a statement, "In view of the images of the violence of the raging waters in Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany, France, and other parts of Europe, how could we remain indifferent? We want to express our support for the victims, their families, and the rescue workers."
Abreu went on to call for a united commitment in caring for God's creation. He said, "This century is marked by the unleashing of the forces of nature, whether it is the intense heat that causes fires, the torrential rains in the middle of summer, or the virus that is shaking the whole world. We cannot forget the responsibility of human beings in these phenomena and the consequences of the massive exploitation of natural resources. What is happening these days is a vibrant call for immediate solidarity, but also for a long-term commitment to a different ecological ethic with respect for creation."
Abreu wrapped up his statement saying, "Now is the time for our tears to tell a story of solidarity and prayer. The Adventist Church, through its ADRA network, is committed to those who suffer to alleviate, help, and support."
According to reports, Belgium received extreme rainfall starting from July 12 through 15, which left a trail of devastation to populated areas. At least 31 people died in the floods and 163 are reported missing. Searches are still underway in the affected areas, but rescue operations are almost complete. To date, 37,000 households are without electricity in the provinces of Liège and Walloon-Brabant. In Liège, the number dropped to 10,000 households, but they are still experiencing great difficulty in accessing the facilities. Floodwaters also disrupted Belgium's national railway network, stopping services in the French-speaking south of the country. There have also been numerous reports of interruptions to the power supply, broken pipes, or pollution of water catchments linked to surface water infiltration. Authorities describe it as one of the greatest natural disasters Belgium has ever known. The water has largely receded, but the extreme devastation is gradually becoming visible. The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA, in Belgium has deployed volunteers from the Adventist churches to assist survivors in the areas that were most affected. Communication and fundraising officer for ADRA Belgium, Seville Yigit, said that after getting permission to provide aid, ADRA worked with local authorities and social services to assess needs. Yigit said, "The situation on the ground is dramatic. On July 19, we mobilized our teams of volunteers from various Adventist churches in Belgium to help the victims of the floods in Verviers. In addition to clearing debris and evacuating homes that are about to collapse, our volunteers also provided comfort and emotional support to the survivors." The volunteer aid operations in Belgium will continue until July 21. Floodwaters also affected regions in Germany where ADRA has deployed a team to provide aid. ADRA Germany personnel say that almost 150 people have died and thousands are without electricity and water. People in the region are also going without clean water. ADRA Germany Public Relations Officer Matthias Munz said, "How extensive the damage will be is far from clear. Your thoughts and prayers for those who lost their lives and for the survivors who must deal with this ordeal are greatly needed." Munz shared that ADRA will take over the coordination of operations, including logistics, and the coordination of in-kind donations such as kitchen facilities, to help individuals and families get back to the recovery stage. We will bring you more information on this story and the work the Adventist Development and Relief Agency and the Adventist Church are doing across Europe as the story unfolds.
Adventists in the Columbia Union Conference, located in the Mid-Atlantic region of the United States, are mourning the death of President of the Allegheny East Conference, Henry J. Fordham III, and his wife, Sharon, who passed away early in the morning on July 18 due to a fire in their home in Douglasville, Pennsylvania. Their son, Sean Fordham, who was with them at the time of the fire, sustained minor injuries and was taken to a local hospital where he was treated for smoke inhalation. He is in stable condition and is expected to be released soon. The cause of the fire has not been determined and is still under investigation. Elder Fordham served as president of the Allegheny East Conference, a post he held since October 2012. They were affectionately known to family and friends as Butch and Sherry. Sharon had recently been battling brain cancer, during which time Henry lovingly supported and cared for her with the help of their sons. They leave 3 sons, Joey, Donovan, and Sean. Their daughter, Danielle, preceded them in death, several grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. In a statement, Dave Wegley, president of the Columbia Union Conference, shared, "Anyone who worked with Henry knew him to be a Christian gentleman who had a soft touch, big heart, and a tremendous love for Jesus. Sharon, a gracious, kind, and dedicated woman, was the quintessential First Lady of Allegheny East Conference and all the churches Henry pastored. When we all get to heaven, I'll be the first to ask the Lord why we lost our dear friends. Today, our hearts are broken, but, like the Apostle Paul says, we do not grieve without hope." The Allegheny East Conference is located within the Columbia Union Territory. President of the Seventh-day Adventist World Church, Ted N.T. Wilson, also released a statement of condolence on Facebook. Wilson said, "What tragic and disheartening news to hear of the passing of Pastor Henry and Mrs. Sharon Fordham. Pastor Fordham, president of the Allegheny East Conference, was a trusted church administrator and a longtime friend. He came from a long line of faithful Adventist leaders. His kind and godly leadership will be missed by all and by me personally. Our hearts go out to the grieving family members and all church members of the Allegheny East Conference. May the Holy Spirit comfort each of you, and may the Lord come soon."
The Adventist Church in Canada, along with the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA in Canada, are stepping in to provide aid after a devastating wildfire completely destroyed the town of Lytton in British Columbia.
Following the evacuation order on June 30, the Adventist Church in British Columbia, local church members, and leadership in partnership with ADRA Canada sprang into action.
In Duluth, Elaine Roque, ADRA ambassador of the Better Living Center, led the charge in coordinating meals for evacuees, which served more than 200 people. Wildfire evacuees will also have a place to stay for the time being, as the Camp Hope Conference Center canceled all summer camps and programs to accommodate 500 with housing as needed.
Already well known as the location of Canada's highest temperature records, Lytton went on to set an all-time high of 121.3 degrees on June 30. The excessive heat jeopardized the lives of those in the area. Then the fire came.
Lytton is located where the Fraser and Thompson rivers meet and has a population of 250 people. It is also home to Lytton First Nation across more than 4,100 acres of land divided into just over 50 small reservations. 2 of the 56 reservations are in the village of Lytton. Others are spread around the vicinity. Reports from the ground indicate residents had only minutes to flee after first realizing the danger.
The Lytton Creek wildfire scorched about 90% of the village of Lytton and was responsible for at least 2 deaths. It also destroyed properties in the Lytton First Nation community, along with thousands of hectares of land in the Fraser Canyon.
In the days following the Letone disaster, reports have emerged of more than 300 fires burning across the province, with more than 80 out of control. Evacuees not only came from Letone, but all over the region. Many of these fires are still burning.
In total, approximately 1,800 people were forced to leave their homes with little notice and few belongings. Staff at Fountain View Academy, an Adventist boarding high school located 40 kilometers north of the village of Luton, were also forced to leave under the emergency evacuation order.
ADRA was approached by the British Columbia provincial government to lead in organizing the in-kind donation management for the Letone wildfires.
ADRA Canada's executive director, Steve Matthews, said, "Here in Canada, ADRA is one of several faith-based organizations at work cooperatively to respond to emergencies and disasters. We are blessed to be called to do this work, supporting local church efforts in larger responses. We are grateful for every volunteer, every member who is willing to help."
For more information, visit adra.ca.
Coming up, a community center in Puerto Rico unlocks hearts during lockdown.
But up next, ADRA vegetable gardens feed families in Madagascar during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Welcome back.
Earlier in our broadcast, you heard of flooding in Germany, widely blamed on climate change, as well as fires in Canada that destroyed a town in British Columbia.
As news of climate change becomes more dominant and widespread, we thought it would be good to talk to an expert.
We sat down with head scientist for the Geoscience Research Institute, Timothy Standish, to talk about how Seventh-day Adventist Christians should view differing opinions on climate change.
Hi, Tim. Welcome to ANN. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure to be with you.
Tim, today earlier in our broadcast, earlier in our program, we had stories from Europe about flooding and wildfires in Canada, and we are hearing now about even more wildfires coming in the West Coast. In fact, I don't know if you've heard, but I'm on the East Coast, you're on the West Coast. You know, I'm near Washington, D.C., and we're seeing the impact of the wildfires in the West through haziness, fog, and smoke. That's how severe the wildfires are right now, all across the United States. When you see a lot of these are being blamed on climate change. And so when you see these natural disasters and record heat temperatures, as a scientist, what do you think of? What goes through your mind when you hear these reports?
Well, obviously, the first thing is that weather is one of those things that does change. So when people talk about climate change, we need to be kind of careful. We expect climate to change. And so that's not a particularly, perplexing thing. The real question that I think that most of us wrestle with, not just as scientists, but as citizens and certainly as Christians, is whether or not human beings, the activities of people, are having an impact on this, and whether or not that is true, how our activities as Christians who believe that God created the world and put us on it and created all of these other wonderful creatures, whether how our activities can help to lessen the negative impact of these events.
You know, you've kind of answered my next question, but I'm going to ask it because when I think a lot of times when we talk about climate change or global warming or that type of thing, those terms can be kind of triggering to people because it feels like it's become more of a political political terms rather than something that's happening around us. But as people who believe, as you said, that God created this earth for us to live in, how can we approach these topics of conversation? How can we sort of address them and live within them, and be more responsible as we're sort of going about our daily lives?
Yeah, first of all, we need to realize that Christianity, biblical Christianity, does give us a different perspective on things. And we've got to make sure that we're not adopting a perspective that is indefensible in terms of the message of the Bible and the perspective that it presents. I am aware that there is a stereotype out there of certain Christians saying, hey, Jesus is coming. What do we care? Let's burn everything down. I've yet to meet a Christian who actually believes that. This is only in a certain kind of media that you hear this caricature. So we don't necessarily operate within the bubble of the world, and certainly we would not embrace the kind of hubris that says we can fix it all ourselves. We know that day to day, our lives and the welfare of the entire creation is in the hands of the Creator. So we want to keep that in mind.
Amen. I know that we actually answered my last question through this one, but I do want to ask you, I know you're very passionate about creation, and coming up in September, it's the end of October, the 4th.
End of October. The fourth Sabbath of every October. So October 23 this year is Creation Sabbath.
Right.
That's right.
And so people can go, can you tell them the website where they can go?
It's creationsabbath.net.
It's creationsabbath.net. And
yes.
There you can find out more information about Creation Sabbath and how you can get involved. And I know you guys have videos and sermons and resources there. And
all sorts of stuff. And you know what?
Right.
It's an opportunity for us to be creative ourselves. If you need ideas, there are ideas there, but tap into those creative people in your church and make the most of this opportunity. Go out there in nature and see how God has created things. Do something that contributes in a positive way to the world that God created for us.
Right. And when we learn about God's creation, we're more active to protect it. So it's a full circle here. Full circle.
There we go.
Thank you, Tim, for joining us. We're so happy to have you anytime.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure.
Coming up, Michael Yunker is here with This Week in Adventist History.
But up next, Adventist Mission recognizes the work ADRA has done throughout the COVID-19 pandemic.
We may look, pray, read, think, worship, sing, and share differently, but we all look forward to the Sabbath, and we all look forward to the future when Jesus will come again. With this message in mind, we arrived at a core component for a new identity system: the creation grid. Regardless of what or where you are designing, you can always find information to help you communicate that we are all Seventh-day Adventists.
Welcome back.
The Adventist Development and Relief Agency is the global humanitarian arm of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
With a team of more than 10,000 dedicated humanitarians, they have served communities around the world through the COVID-19 pandemic.
Adventist Mission has more.
The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA, is the global humanitarian arm of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We are a team of more than 10,000 dedicated humanitarians in more than 100 countries who tirelessly serve the world's most vulnerable people every day. For decades, ADRA has responded to some of the world's most devastating disasters and crises. But nothing could have prepared us for a global pandemic. COVID-19 forced us to rethink and redesign the way we would face this new crisis. Within days of the pandemic, ADRA established a global COVID-19 task force to drive the response. Within weeks, the task force had established a strategy to serve vulnerable people around the world. What did that look like? In response to the pandemic, ADRA created 422 projects to serve 20 million people in 96 countries. ADRA pivoted to meet needs with the support of our generous partners. The ability to leverage funds strategically helped ADRA's response grow to more than $26 million, thanks in large part to the strength and support of our partnerships with the Adventist Church, governments, United Nations agencies, corporations, and other nonprofit organizations. For every $1 that ADRA invested, our partners contributed $7. Our work with the church in particular was a major success. Nearly 70% of all COVID-19 response projects were in partnership with our church. Adventists around the world came together to support the mission of ADRA. They came together in solidarity for those who were suffering and for those who continue to suffer, so all may live as God intended. Thanks to our partnership with the Adventist Church and other agents of change, ADRA is working around the clock to counteract the fallout of the pandemic. For years, ADRA has helped communities stay healthy because we understand that when health is affected, little else matters. This is why we have been supporting health projects around the globe to ensure that people are not made more vulnerable by sickness. Ensuring that families remain healthy was never more important than during this devastating global pandemic. To mitigate the impact of the virus, our response included 97 health projects, helping more than 5 million people around the world. Our partnership with Adventist-led health facilities has reached many in need. During this response, ADRA delivered tons of personal protective equipment supplies to hospitals and healthcare centers so that health workers and patients alike could be protected. In partnership with Adventist broadcasters, ADRA also sent out critically important health messages to millions of people to ensure hand washing and proper precautions to reduce the spread of the virus. ADRA also understands that water and sanitation are critical in times of need. During a health crisis especially, proper sanitation does more than almost anything to stop the spread of the virus. And ADRA has been hard at work to ensure people around the globe have access to hand washing stations, cleaning alcohol, and proper training of sanitation protocols. This year, our COVID task force has tailored 89 projects to address the needs of water and sanitation. More than 4 million people have accessed these projects. Few fallouts of any crisis, however, can match the desperation of global hunger. As markets collapsed, economies crumbled, and millions lost their jobs, food became harder to find and to afford. Families who had never experienced hunger waited in lines at food banks and distribution centers. Children missed meals. Many felt the pangs not only of hunger, but also of hopelessness. For these reasons, ADRA spent $8.5 million to ensure that vulnerable families around the world would not go hungry. In Northern Colombia, ADRA worked with the Adventist Church to select 100 Wayuu indigenous families who were unable to work and earn money so they could receive regular food baskets during the pandemic. In total, our COVID task force implemented 134 projects to feed more than 6 million people around the world. During these times of instability and confusion, support systems break down, mental health suffers, and individuals feel isolated and lonely. ADRA serves them during this time of great suffering. 58 of our COVID-19 projects are tailored specifically for psychosocial support. 2.6 million people have connected with us through these projects and have learned they are not alone. Since the start of our COVID task force, our 422 projects have assured 20 million precious lives that they will not be defeated by the pandemic. This example has given hope to millions more. As ADRA's response grows, our focus will expand to help communities recover from the long term. This forward momentum will see an increased focus in areas of resilience, rebuilding livelihoods, and education for all children. While it is true that the global effects of this novel coronavirus are unprecedented, it is also true that ADRA, in partnership with the Adventist Church, has a proven capacity to rise to the occasion. We serve as the hands and feet of Jesus, so all may live as God intended. Not even a pandemic can change that.
Watch this and other mission stories online by visiting AdventistMission.org. Then click on videos at the top.
And finally, for today's episode, let's turn to Michael Yonker for a look at Adventist history.
This week, we hear about the launch of the Home Study International program.
This week in Adventist history, we look back, which may help us look forward to an important part of Adventist education. On July 18, 1909, the Home Study International program was launched, also known originally as the Fireside Correspondence School. Its first president was Warren Howell, who served in that capacity until 1920, when Charles Lewis succeeded him. His successor, Mylon Olson, who served first as principal and then president from 1923 to 1946, oversaw great growth in the program. By 1931, the Home Study Institute had an enrollment of more than 2,700 students registered from over 50 countries. The background to the HIS program was that early in the 1900s, because educational opportunities were rare and sometimes difficult, correspondence education was increasingly popular within the United States. Home Study International was inspired by Professor Frederick Griggs, one of the early educational leaders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He attended a convention in Atlanta, Georgia, early in 1909, where he heard President Charles Van Hees of the University of Wisconsin describe the fast-developing correspondence school concept in that state. By 1931, the school was incorporated by the District of Columbia under the name Home Study Institute. It became Home Study International in the mid-1980s, and in 1990, the Home Study International expanded its contribution to the global mission of the Seventh-day Adventist Church by founding a new degree-granting division called Griggs University, named in honor of Frederick Griggs. The university today continues to offer coursework contributing to several degree programs at both the Associate of Arts and Bachelor of Arts levels, and an accompanying academy, Griggs International Academy, so named in 2003, also offers coursework for high school students. As one ponders the importance of the internet and education looking into the future, one can imagine that the distance education model Adventists were quick to recognize as important in 1909 may remain a key part of Adventist education going forward into the future. It is today headquartered on the campus of Andrews University. That is This Week in Adventist History.
Thanks for watching ANN. Join us next week for more news from the headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Did you know the Adventist Church has a YouTube channel where you can watch ANN video, ANN in-depth, and plenty of other amazing videos on prophecy, health, and Bible study?
Just go to YouTube and search for the Adventist Church. Click the subscribe button to make sure you're caught up each week.
And remember, leave a comment or a prayer request. We have people who are praying for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Before we say goodbye, here's some good news from the book of 1 Chronicles, chapter 17, verses 19 and 20.
The passage says, Lord, for the sake of your servant and according to your will, you have done this great thing and made known all these great promises. There is no one like you, Lord, and there is no God but you, as we have heard with our own ears.
That's our program for this week. And remember, you can always visit Adventist.news for daily news and videos. Until next time, God bless.
Take care.